are these people?
As I mentioned earlier, on Monday, unfortunately, given that it was MLK Day, he got no love because Inauguration Day was on the same day. And obviously, all the pomp and circumstance regarding Trump's second time in office obviously became a lot more prevalent in the news cycle over MLK. So I did not want to talk about Trump ad nauseum like everybody else. I wanted to talk about this guy here. So, MLK talked about toward the end of his life a revolution of values. As you guys know, like we all know him for the "I Have a Dream" speech, which has been right. That speech that has been bastardized now to the point where like he was talking about love and like solidarity and connection with everybody regardless of color and all that kind of stuff, but people don't often talk about how he talked about the establishment and how the crooks and how we need to talk about restructuring our current government to meet the needs of everybody economically primarily. So no one talks about that aspect of MLK, but more of like the other side that that we kind of read in school, whatever. So I know we kind of talked about him last year in a similar way, given the topic, but we're going to take it from another angle, at least this year. I found from ScheerPost this article from Edward J. Curtin Jr.
Yep.
I'm not going to read all of it because he kind of gets very philosophy. And fun fact, I failed philosophy in college. So
really,
funny enough.
How do you do
yes,
that?
I did.
I mean, it's a story for another time, probably. Okay, that you would do it.
Long story short, I didn't go to class because I found it very boring. And then I got in a mild depression spell, so I was not physically able to go to class anyway. So,
yeah.
But I found a lot of the jargon that just went way above my head. So it's just kind of like, okay, whatever. Funny enough, I say that, and I was a theology major of all things. So
and maybe you should go
the
back
irony
and
in
what do they call that thing where you audit, right? You can go back and audit a class, just sit into one.
No, well, unfortunately, by that point, it was too late. So I had to redo it in order to graduate. So it was fine.
At least you
I took another. Yeah. So I think that was the only class I actually failed in my life. Like just straight up F.
Everyone gets one. I had more than one, but that's what we want to talk. But
But I digress. So we're not going to read the whole article like we always do. If you want to read any of our articles that we feature, you can go in the description, whether you're on YouTube or Rumble. You can find them there if you want to read the whole thing. Yeah. I'm not going to read the whole thing tonight.
Can you read?
I am going to read the main. I am going to read the main parts of it just so people can get the gist of what Edward was writing about, referring to MLK. So if you zoom back in, we'll get started. Where he writes about MLK, Vietnam, and Gaza. Before my mind was turned to the subject of my title, I started to write a piece called "Are the Dead Nostalgic?" It's a touchy philosophical question that has no definite answer. It seems flippant in an impossible way, which it is, but its flippancy holds a secret message. So I asked the dead who would speak to me, and I got a few mixed and muffled replies. You can understand their reluctance to say anything. If I heard correctly, one of them said, "You should ask the living." Most didn't answer, which had me wonder why. Were they disgusted with us? Yeah, again, just kind of very cerebral type thinking here. So, I'd always heard that nostalgia was not good for you since it kept you rooted in the past, that this ache for home, the good old days that may or may not have existed, but you miss them nevertheless, prevented you from living Zen-like in the present or looking forward to the future. But I wondered if nostalgia could be a form of utopian hope in reverse at a time when humanistic utopian thinking is at a nadir, overwhelmed by the machine dreams of people like Elon Musk and those at the World Economic Forum. This degeneration of nostalgia assumed you were alive. I was wondering about the dead. What did they think? Did they wish they were still alive? Was being alive the good old days for them, or did they feel like they were finally home and that life had been a dream? Then, this proclivity of mine towards philosophical thought and dark humor flipped in my mind as the pictures of dead and weeping Palestinian children swept in and tortured me in dreams. I had seen the photos and videos of the ongoing Israeli genocide of Palestinians, and I felt sick and outraged afterwards. I've written against it many times. Yes, as I wrote about this issue of nostalgia, I felt like a spectator in abstractions, and I thought of MLK's experience when on January 14, 1967, he was at an airport restaurant fumbling through a Ramparts magazine and saw an article by journalist William Pepper, The Children of Vietnam, that featured the photos of Vietnamese mothers holding dead and napalm children.
Yeah.
In 1999, the author James W. Douglas, JFK and the Unspeakable, etc., wrote an essay describing this serendipitous event for King. The final chapter of MLK's life began on January 14, 1967, the day on which King committed himself to deepening his opposition to the Vietnam War. He was at an airport restaurant on his way to a retreat in Jamaica. While looking through magazines, he came across an illustrated article in Ramparts, The Children of Vietnam. His co-worker Bernard Lee never forgot King's shock as he looked at photos of young napalm victims. He froze as he looked at the pictures from Vietnam. He saw a picture of a Vietnamese mother holding her dead baby, a baby killed by a military. Then Martin just pushed the plate of food away from him. I looked up and said, "Doesn't it taste any good?" And he answered, "Nothing will ever taste any good for me until I do everything I can to end that war." Martin King was overwhelmed with grief and outrage. Against all advice from his associates in the civil rights movement, he realized he must publicly and unequivocally oppose the Vietnam War, which he did 2.5 months later on April 4th at Riverside Church in New York City in his famous speech, Beyond Vietnam, A Time to Break the Silence, in which he denounced the U.S. war against Vietnam, linking it to his battle against racism and for economic justice for everybody. We're actually going to look at portions of this speech later, since it's an hour long. He became a revolutionary. It led to his assassination by the U.S. government exactly 1 year later on April 4th, 1968 in Memphis. But his legacy lives on despite the official MLK Day attempts to reduce him to a manageable death threat at a one-trick pony. Mm-hmm. Conscience calls at odds moments to rule one's soul. It sneaks into one's dreams and daylight thoughts, even in synchronous ways, as I realize that today's date is January 14th, 58 years to the day MLK saw those photos in Ramparts. Just yesterday, while listening to a podcast, I heard historian Peter Zunick say that when he asked his students at AU, American University, who had all been to the Vietnam Memorial Wall in DC, and seen the names of the 58,318 dead Americans, how many Vietnamese were killed in the war, they answered in a range of 90,000. While on a trip to Hanoi last year, Kunitz learned that the official Vietnamese count is 5 million, to which one could add another 1 million Thai, Laotian, and Cambodians. Kunitz had been assuming the 3.8 million dead Vietnamese figure was correct, but his bright students had no idea because their knowledge of history is abysmal, which kind of leads into, just talk about Gaza, how they kind of undercount the deaths there when it's probably a lot. They say 40,000, around 40,000, when the death count is a lot higher here. So just to kind of give you some connections there, Vietnam, that they undercounted, the deaths
of sounds familiar,
of the natives, so to speak. as we would in history. Similarly, just this past week, the English medical journal The Lancet reported that the death toll in Gaza in the first 9 months as a result of Israel's genocidal assault was about 40% higher than reported by the Palestinian Health Ministry. The study's best estimate puts the number of dead Palestinians, excluding the severely injured, those dead from starvation, those missing under the rubble, etc., at approximately 64,000 from October 7th to June 30th to 2024. Of those, the study concluded that approximately 60% were women, children, and old people. As everyone knows, Israel has turned Gaza into a wasteland and a killing field that has continued to the present day, with Israel furiously continuing to attack, killing 38 Palestinians yesterday as of the publishing of this article.
Heavily underreported even then, right? They said that recently.
Right.
Do you know anything about Gulf of Tonkin incident?
I do not.
You should go back when Oz hosted the show. He brought like what started a lot of the anti-war movement, which pushed King into listening to this stuff, right? And Gulf of Tonkin in and of itself was like big false flag stuff. One of the first ones we had, like, there was a lot of hearsay about it, but Oz talked about that. It was actually a really well-informed piece, and I think there's quite a few parallels. History is doomed to repeat itself, as we know. But
right.
Since we're talking about that,
as with the death figures from Vietnam, these numbers are no doubt generally underestimated and can be multiplied by 3, 4, or more. But if you follow the corporate mainstream media, especially in the US and its adjuncts, you'll learn nothing of this. It is assumed that people don't care and are more interested in strange flying objects over the skies of the Northeast that have obstinately disappeared until they will be revived, the sex and drinking habits of Trump's cabinet nominees, and the latest sports and celebrity news. Many don't care, and many do, but people generally feel battered and overwhelmed by the insane condition of the country, the endless news reports of all things to fear, the political dirty tricks and propaganda, the corruption, the ripoffs, the lies of posturing, etc. Many have been so dumbed down by the endless propaganda that they will believe anything. Half the voting population has invested their hopes in Trump, just as the other half did with Biden, both delusional in the extreme. Those dead Palestinian children that torment me are the results of the Biden administration's alliance with fellow Israeli Zionist Netanyahu, two bloody nihilists, now to be replaced by Trump, a third enthusiastic supporter of genocide. Those of us who have been speaking out for years are also tired. I am tired. The recent Israeli-U.S. bloody victories in the Mideast came as a shock to those who hoped Israel and the Netanyahu government will be forced to desist. The opposite has occurred. Lebanon, Syria, Yemen. Is Iran next?
Correct.
And you will notice I have not even mentioned Ukraine and the U.S. war against Russia. It's heavy stuff, hard on the spirit, so perhaps you can understand my desire to delve into philosophical and artistic matters from time to time.
I see a lot of people do that. Usually that's a good depression if I were going to diagnose things, but, that's just me, but like...
Yet sometimes a time to break the silence is always now, and the message comes to us from to remember to speak out. The official organs of the government and press on January 20th will once again urge everyone to remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as a statue of the past, frozen in time, a fighter for racial justice, but nothing else. His oppositions to the triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism will be ignored. Who will say that if he were alive today, he would condemn the genocide in Gaza, the U.S. war against Russia via Ukraine, and war making throughout the world? So he goes on to talk about what he said in his Vietnam speech, but instead of reading it, we're actually going to listen to him. So like I said, we're not going to read the whole thing in full. But before we get to that, actually, you can go back.
Yeah.
This is a clip that a lot of people are probably familiar with. So this was him speaking at his church, Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, with the famous NBC News interview that he did in 1967. And here he starts talking about, a revolution of values, which I think kind of brings into the later talk of his Vietnam speech in New York, where he goes into that a little bit more. So actually, if you play this,
that these young people are saying that there must be a revolution of values in our country. As Jimmy Baldwin said on one occasion, what advantage is there in being integrated into a burning house? And I feel that there is a need for a revolution of values in America, because some of the values that presently exist are certainly out of line with the values and the idealistic structure that brought our nation into being. Unfortunately, we haven't been true to these ideals, and many of the values of so-called white middle-class society are values that need to be reviewed and re-evaluated, and in a real sense, they need to be changed. So I think the young people in the Negro community who are raising these questions are raising some very profound questions about our total society. In other words, they are saying that there must be a restructuring of the architecture of our society where values are concerned. And with this, I would agree with. So,
our enemies are all those in league with imperialism, the bureaucrats, the big landlord class, and the reactionary section of the intelligentsia attached to them.
Who was that?
John Candy.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So obviously from there, we'll, like I said, it's an hour sermon. So if you want to find it on YouTube, you can go to Beyond Vietnam, a Trying to Break the Silence.
Is there praise breaks?
What's that?
Is there praise breaks? Like,
No.
Can we praise God real quick? No? We're not going to
No.
go Kirk Douglas in the middle of it? I need a praise break, Collin. I need those claps. We're going to sit through an hour of sermon. I need claps. You know?
Well, it's more of a speech of anything else, but he did it at Riverside Church in New York. But like I said, it's an hour. If you want to watch it on YouTube, I highly recommend you do. So we're going to play, not to say the most important, but I think pertinent to the article that I think we want to share. So this is the first part. There are going to be two different videos for this. So if we play this part.
Yeah, hold on. I got to skip forward. Wait. This play.
It is with such activity in mind that the words of the late John F. Kennedy come back to haunt us. 5 years ago, he said, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable."
I want to spin it back.
What?
You want to spin it back because of the words there. So.
You're talking about this. There you go.
Peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.
Again.
It is with such activity in mind that the words of the late John F. Kennedy come back to haunt us. 5 years ago, he said, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable." Increasingly
actually pause there.
By
yeah.
So I don't think people really take that
similar
quote to heart, but the idea of like it's not to say that Emma
another quote
right.
From him.
Yeah, but it's like the idea of like people are saying, "Oh, we shouldn't be violent," like we need to be peaceful and all that kind of stuff. Like even JFK was saying, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, violence is justified. And the fact that King is saying it, and I don't think King would necessarily use that quote if he, not to say he believed in it, but he said, but I think it's his way is cause and effect. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, then this will happen. You know, so I think it's the idea of like, oh, MLK was nonviolent. I think that's kind of a misleading
See, and I think that that's
way of
partially, that's like the only reason he did that was as cover for decorum that we both know doesn't necessarily get you what you want all the time, you know? So I think he started to
right.
figure that out as he was
Yes.
engaged, you know?
Yes.
Like,
And
it's
I
one
and I
thing to be like
argue, and we've
idealistic about it, you know?
right.
So,
But we've talked about this before. It's in
yeah,
terms of, you know, I think he was very optimistic,
yeah.
you know, as you know, I had a dream era. And
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, there are things like the Civil Rights Act was passed and all of that, but not much change was happening within the Black community in particular. So
Yes.
then he's kind of got jaded to that. And then he was
Was
just
the
kind of like,
I retweeted something today from Fred Hampton that was like about black capitalism and stuff, where it's like we've got, you know, Black Christmas, Black Easter, Black April Fool's Day, you know, you know, like everything to make
right,
the black businessman. And if you ain't here to bring, you know, something that's for the masses, like I ain't with it, you know?
right,
So something to that effect.
right, right. So
But
it's the idea of like, you know, and you know, Nelson Mandela
huh?
said something similar. It's the idea of
Lumumba
like,
and all those
right,
cats.
violence is inevitable, and this kind of
Uh-huh.
gives some precedence to what's happening in Gaza. You know, you do not do what you're supposed to do for your people, violence is going to, as part of an uprising, is going to be enforced. And so the people who say, oh, you shouldn't be violent, you're tearing down shit, you like all this kind of stuff, you know, a lot of the greats weren't necessarily saying we should be nonviolent. Now,
No.
Dr. King
But,
himself would
you
not
know,
necessarily promote that himself, but he also was like, violence is the language of the unheard.
yes.
So,
And
you know,
guillotines is in the language of the French.
French
And
is the language of love.
French
right.
is the language of love.
So,
So, you know, as long as we're grabbing gillies out here, I'm down. You know?
right. So it's interesting that he would use that MLK quote that talks about violence when a lot of people, I think, in the media to whitewash him say he was nonviolent.
Right.
Again, it's not to say that he would necessarily promote violence, but he understood that violence is a result of uncare and injustice that would occur within the community. And that is a
Correct.
natural response to
Yep.
that.
Especially
So
when
found that very
nonviolence
interesting.
is met with violence by your oppressors. So,
Right.
you know, just saying. But, you know,
But
don't
anyway,
want to say too much.
Accident. This is the role our nation has taken, the role of those who make peaceful revolution impossible by refusing to give up the privileges and the pleasures that come from the immense profits of overseas investments. I am convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Looks like you found some little red books to read. Just don't pay too much attention to it. Don't. Just,
right.
you know, quiet for the people in the back. Quiet for the people in the back. That's some
When machines
that's some
and
shit right
computers,
there.
profit motives and property rights are
Oh, wait, what? Machines, computers, and profit motives, you say?
considered more important than people, the
More important than people. Got it.
giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism
Man, does that sound familiar?
are incapable of being conquered. A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. On the one hand, we are called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside. But that will be only an initial act.
That means I don't start shit, but I might finish it. That's what that is. That's literally
Well,
what
I
he's
interpret
saying.
it another way. Like, actually
he's
play
saying-
forward and I'll
Yeah, on one hand, we are called to be the Good Samaritan. We're meant to, turn our cheek, right? But that's just the initial act we give you. Like,
right, but keep playing.
That's
Keep playing.
our courtesy is that.
One day we must come to
Right.
see that the whole Jericho road must be transformed so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make that journey on life's highway. True
There you
compassion
go.
is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring.
That.
Oh, don't be telling people that. Don't be telling
Right.
people that.
So it's the idea of like charity. That's what he's basically saying. Charity. Like, which I think is kind of the scapegoat, especially if you're privileged. Oh, we'll just give these money to the poor, or we'll give this thing to the poor and have it be done with. Why are they poor to begin with? That's the thing that you need to tackle, which we don't.
Yeah.
So this is the restructuring.
What? Sorry, say again.
This is the restructuring that that's the restructuring that MLK was talking about here. It's one thing, and look, I kind of see it, and no offense to our colleagues in space who promote mutual aid, and I know they want to do more beyond that, but mutual aid in of itself is not enough. Like, we have to talk about, we have to fix the thing of why mutual aid is necessary to begin with. So both needs to happen. So like, you can't have one
and if
without
you
the
talk to
other.
X about how to make that happen, he might have, but also guess what happened to both of them?
Right.
Fred Hampton too. Guess what happened to him? Oh wait, I remember.
Right.
So. Raucous applause.
Right. So it's funny, again, this is the aspect of MLK that no one listens to, no one's going to talk about. It's talking about that I have a dream streets like togetherness in terms of skin color, whatever, but not necessarily talking about this, where he talks about the radical restructuring of our society so where everybody will benefit. One more from his speech. So this is a little longer. So I think this is kind of more apparent for now, just talking about the frustration that people might feel right now. So he does speak into that a little bit. So in continuation of his speech here. So we'll play the whole thing. Oh, I should.
What? Yeah, you should have handed it to me, and I could have.
No, you can get going.
The time has come for America to hear the truth. The truth must be told. But the mission to which they call us is the most difficult one. Against all the apathy of conformist thought within one's own bosom. It's a dark day in our nation. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. I'm convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. True revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our present policies. A true revolution of values will lay hands on the world order. The genuine revolution of values means, in the final analysis, that our loyalties must become ecumenical rather than sectional. Every nation must now develop an overriding loyalty to mankind as a whole. This call for worldwide fellowship is in reality a call for all-embracing, unconditional love for all men. Has now become an absolute necessity for the survival of mankind. It is time for all people of conscience to call upon America. Come back home. Come home, America. I call on Washington today. I call on every man and woman of goodwill all over America today. I call on the young men of America who must make a choice today. Take a stand on this issue. Let us go out this morning with that determination. I have not lost faith. I'm not in despair. I haven't lost faith because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I speak out against this government because I love America. There can be no great disappointment where there is no great love. I'm disappointed with our failure to deal positively and forthrightly with the triple evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism. We are presently moving down a dead-end road that can lead to national disaster. All men are made in the image of God. All men are brothers. All men are created equal. Every man is an heir to a legacy of dignity and worth. Every man has rights that are neither conferred by nor derived from the state they are God-given. Out of one blood, God made all men to dwell upon the face of the earth. What a marvelous foundation for any home. What a glorious and healthy place to inhabit. But America strayed away, and this unnatural excursion has brought only confusion and bewilderment. It has left hearts aching with guilt and minds distorted with irrationality. Now, it isn't easy to stand up for truth and for justice. Being frustrated when you tell the truth and take a stand, and above all with a passionate desire to see our beloved country stand as the moral example of the world. Let us bear it. Bear it for truth. Bear it for justice. Bear it for peace. And the press generally won't tell us these things, but God told me to tell you this morning. It must be told.
I think that's it, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit more.
I know you're asking today, how long will it take? I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because the truth pressers will rise again. How long? Not long. Because no lie can live forever.
No.
Well,
So,
what happened to him?
as I said, well, less than a year after.
Uh-huh.
So, this was the stuff that had his life taken away. So, but I think we're very fortunate that we still have his words and we still have clips and video still that we're able to, kind of hear that. And, especially in independent media, we have the space to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I would say freely, but I put that in quotation marks.
The revolution will not be televised.
But yeah, again, I just felt it was important to share again because Trump got all the press.
Well, and also he just allegedly released the assassination files on this, right? Which people like Lisa Pierce and Whitney and everyone is just like, they are not releasing any truths on anything like that if it's got to go through the intelligence agencies. And anyone it would implicate is long since not a problem. So, Like, I mean, easy publicity to get though. So, you know,
Yeah.
but
It's funny because I saw a tweet that someone said, like, if Kamala was president,
yeah,
obviously it would have been on the same day. You know, like the kind of, you know, the talking points that people would have to justify her,
yeah,
you know, given, you know, like, yeah, like here's this black woman, but she is a puppet for the very issues that, as you heard MLK say, he was against.
yeah.
So how would that work? You
It
know,
wouldn't.
in the context, and it wouldn't. So, you know, I think, but either way, it's, you know, I felt like MLK wasn't mentioned at all. Like he was undermined, you know, last week, but I also feel like if it were Kamala, he would have been overhyped in the wrong possible way and trying to use identity politics to justify her being president. Well, both of them
Both of these.
are, Trump and Kamala
Mhm.
are both against the very issues that MLK stood for and wanted to fight against up until his assassination. So it yeah. So as I said, I wanted to give him some attention, you know, but I think also as a reminder of what he stood for, especially in his law life, that still need to be fought for and still people need to bring more attention to that versus the other stuff that we've kind of whitewashed him for that
Yeah.
most people in the country know.
Nope. Couldn't agree. I'm
But
trying to find. I thought I had saved it. There was a. I can find it here in a sec. Picture of from like put out by Iran. If I just search the term, that was like Trump and Obama put together. You know, did you see that one?
mm-mm.
Here, I'll pull it up. Yeah, here we go. Whoop. Come on. Do the thing. Hold on. I just had to like click here and drag. There we go. This one. Right? Like,
Spin it around.
yep. It's in Arabic, so probably still difficult, but yeah, it's like American policies remain the same, only their faces change. That's the translation. And it's like Trump within Obama's head. Like it's the
Right. Oh, I see that.
you know
Yeah.
little thing. But I was just thought about it while you were saying both parties same Johnson. You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but yeah. Will, anything else you wanted to add?
That's why I'm demonetized rather.
Yeah, yep. That is
We're talking
correct.
about mess like this. So if you want to support us, please feel free to scan the QR code if you're on your smartphone and scan that thing there with the QR code. Or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of the screen. Or if you're on YouTube, you can type in ! The actual punctuation mark, donate, all one word. And the link will pop up in the chat and you
I
can
am once
click the link
again
there.
asking for your financial support.
Fuck off, Bernie. So you're able, if you want to donate, again, as little as $1 helps. Anything helps us towards, you know, funding this show and funding the network as a whole. We would highly appreciate it. And obviously, we know that people may not be able to give financially. We know times are hard and probably going to be harder now. So the free thing that you can do in order to support us is like and subscribe to our content. those of you who have been around for a while, please check and make sure you are subscribed, because YouTube does some BS and unsubscribe members. So please double check for a quick second and make sure you're subscribed. And please share our clips and our content to help us fight the suppression on YouTube, and make sure you leave a comment. What do you think about, MLK's speech? How do you feel in terms of what he said? Is it applicable to now? Do you feel that now there's been a lot of talk of, yeah, he stood for Israel, but how do you feel in terms of what's going on now, what he would say in terms of, the strife and chaos that is happening in our world now? If you are, how are you encouraged to actually stand up and fight in terms of what he said, and especially in light of being in the second era of Trump? And I'll argue even post-Trump, the argument is, look, it's our government. It's all the same entity. So post-Trump, we're still going to deal with the same issues. So how do you think that we should be moving towards fighting for a more justice-filled country that MLK dreamed of? And help us get to free K. We're getting there very slowly, but we hope to hit that at some point this year. And thanks for watching.